Jeff Stearns, connected through cars with my good friend, Paul Potratz. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be visiting with Paul today because Paul's a special guy to me. He may not know that. I think he plays himself down a little bit. And I left retail dealerships and went into the software business to car dealers at Car Chat 24 and a little bit of consulting. And Paul helped me out quite a bit in trying to get me going and working at some of these conferences, referred some clients. Always just very nice to me, even though he's a big name. If you're not in the car business, Potratz Advertising, Potratz websites are a household name in the car industry. So when I would bump into Paul at a conference and he would treat me like I was an important guy, that always meant a lot to me. So Paul still operates the company that he founded, Potratz Advertising or Marketing. He can get deeper into that in a second. But what made me ask him to come on to the show, and I want to pronounce it right, HELDERBURG Lifestyle, centered around Land Rover Defenders, I think 90s and 110s, right?
90s, 110s, 130s. So yeah, the full range.
Okay. So I want to dive right into this, but you have such an interesting background. You're such a diverse guy, and I know you're going to want to play this down, so we're just going to dig it right out of you. If I'm not mistaken, and remember, we can edit. In Yiddish, we would call you a schmata guy. You're a suit, a haberdasher or a bespoke suit guy, and also columnist in some famous magazines or a famous magazine. Am I right?
Yeah, I wrote for quite a while for Forbes Magazine.
Paul, you're an advertising and marketing guy. That's all you're going to give me? Like, I wrote for a long time for Forbes Magazine.
Jeff Stearns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Stearns.
I mean, I wrote for a lot of different magazines and over the years, just really trying to get exposure, trying to build brand.
What, like, for example, at Forbes, what were you the authority in where they asked you or invited you to contribute?
So it was, I met Gary Vaynerchuk, and he asked me to come speak at one of his conferences. So we went to Miami, went to speak at one of the conferences. And then I talked about video and video marketing. So then it was one of the publishers from Forbes that said, hey, why don't you come do an article talking about, video marketing? And I mean, what I've always talked about is for CEOs. So, owners of businesses or whatever, that they really need to get out and they need to be part of their marketing because, I mean, it's cliche, but people would much rather buy from somebody they feel like they know versus just a nameless, faceless, brand.
Sure.
And so that's what I started writing about. I was writing about, anything from video podcasts to video marketing to doing, reels on Instagram, building your YouTube channel. So it all really revolved around video because that's what I've always used. I mean, to build sales for myself or build sales for anyone.
Where did the suits, were you called a haberdasher? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that, the suits, and I wanted to be a fashion designer when I was young. I was always into different fabrics and textures and contrast and how to put, how you can actually put a plaid with a gingham, and people are like, that doesn't make any sense, but you can. So I just always loved fabrics and textures and colors. So, starting out when I really didn't have any money, I would go to the Goodwill store and I would rummage and try to find suits and try to find things that, and that's how I started. And I would find some pretty cool suits, and from some guy that was dead, that he was stylish many years ago. And then as I started to make money, I started, and especially with all the traveling and all the conferences, because I was gone pretty much nonstop. I was gone 20 days out of the month speaking at conferences. So I got to hit a lot of different stores and, pick and choose. And I would usually find my clothing off of the discount racks where people didn't want it because it didn't fit where they wanted to look like everybody else. And I wanted to look like somebody else. So that's how the suits really started. But yeah,
well, for the show, I'll try to find some pictures of you in some of these suits. I mean, no doubt, making a brand for yourself, being remembered, no question, someone running into you at one of these conferences would expect to see you in some suit that you would never really see anyone else in. And not super shocking for me because I was in the exotic car business. And although I dealt with a lot of clients that never wore a suit, when we would get into the proper English, at the meetings in England, I mean, this is what we would see and this is what we would try to wear if we could get away with it. But it makes complete sense when I was talking to you earlier about your lifestyle and Land Rover project, about how involved you are with the colors and the leather swatches. I mean, in Rolls, Bentley, Lotus, of course, at a Ferrari, Lambo store, anything, Aston. Of course, there's the bespoke department where you pick your leathers and your stitching and embossed and what the mats are and the color of the brakes and the wheel, etc. So I think that's right up your alley. I think you love it.
I do. I definitely do love that. And it's, Land Rover and the Defender, and why I love that so much is because they were built as a farm truck. They were never ever a luxury vehicle. They weren't meant to be a luxury vehicle. They weren't meant to be a status symbol, but I look at it as it's a wonderful canvas to do whatever you want to do with it. And that's what I love about it. I mean, and like the ones behind me, just like this one, that's the one that's blue. So that's a custom color that I came up with. That is a flashback to the 80s. I mean, there was, the Ford Thunderbird was similar to this color. So I took that color, and the interior is like a creamy white, and put a rope on the front. It has a mahogany floor in the back. But then, of course, it does have power windows, central door locks, puddle lights, LED lighting, air conditioning, heating, heated seats. So it's got all those modern features. And I've always been drawn to, I just feel like we lost style many years ago. And the cars that we drive, the cars that we buy, the way we dress. I mean, it just amazes me when I go out and see somebody in their pajamas, and I'm like, really? You take no pride in what you do.
As you're speaking to the guy who took the baby to the grocery store Sunday in his pajama bottoms.
Oh.
I did it. But now you've got me self-conscious about it. You got me thinking about it.
I just think you have to, and I mean, granted, I go around being on a farm because I have a horse farm in upstate New York, and I'll be out with the horses or with the dogs or whatever, and, and I'll look homeless when I go into a store full of mud and everything else. But
I'm also in Palm Harbor, Florida, near Clearwater Beach, where, I mean, pretty hard to not see someone in a flip-flop.
But that's fine. That fits. I mean, it's hard for me when I go to the warm climates because I sweat like a pig when I'm wearing all that wool there.
Well, I'm hoping that you don't have like wool baggies. Did you go through a process to land on Defenders, or was it always Defender when you were heading this way?
No, it was always Land Rovers. It was always Defenders, because growing up, my dad was always in love with stuff, and it was anything handmade. And if it was made in England, he was all about it. And my dad was not, growing up, we, definitely not a wealthy family, far from it, actually below middle class. And my dad would save and save and save to be able to have nice things. He would rather have fewer things if they were nice, but he never bought into name brand logo, look at the logo stuff. And so it started with his Raleigh 3-speed bicycle is what it really started with, me riding in the baby seat in the back. And then, he was always drawn to Land Rovers and, Norton motorcycles and Triumphs and that type of stuff. So it was just an automatic. And I remember looking at pictures of Defenders, or actually Land Rovers when I was very young, series trucks, going, man, I wish I could have one of those. And I always dreamed about having one. And then finally, one day I bought one, and it drove like crap. It handled like crap. It was just horrible. It just was not a vehicle you would want to drive. And that's where I set out to say, what can I do to make this Land Rover Defender a daily driver? Because I think it's cool. I think it's different, and it's not a status symbol per se, but everybody thinks it's really cool. So that's the way it started, me working on my own. And, and then something just clicked one day, and I said, I think I could start offering these. But it just kind of fit in everything that I love. I mean, like my boots, I primarily always wear boots that are Edward Green and made in England, handmade. Shotguns. I've always loved English shotguns. I've always loved, upland hunting. I don't like to shoot the little birds, but I like the whole thing about it. I love, wax cotton coats, Barber, and the flat caps. And I don't know, it's just something that, that we migrate to something that we like. And everything around British is just so exciting to me. And I don't know why. I think the British have a really nice style. Their vehicles are not very reliable, but the lines, I mean, even when I was a young guy and everybody was wanting to drive, Camaros, I wanted a Jaguar XJS. So it was just, so that's kind of the way it started and I said, and where I live on, the horse farm, and it just fit perfectly. And I said, this is going to be, sharing what I enjoy. And I really love to do photography and videography. And so I started shooting pictures of my Defenders and on my personal profile. And it just, the interaction and the engagement was kind of surprising. And I said, I've got to I need to build a brand around this. And that's what I started doing, and it hasn't been that long, but it's been it's done really well.
So you launched your Facebook page and Instagram around this February of 20, if I recall?
September 11th, 2019 is when the page went up, but I didn't really have any Defenders available to sell, so it took me a while. I mean, I started the build process actually May of 2019, launched the page in September of 2019, finished the first Defender in February of 2020. So that's when it really started, was February of 2020.
So in business, February of 20, with your first Defender, and you're doing, and we'll put them on the if you're listening to this, please go to YouTube. This is one that's worth watching, because we'll have some beautiful photos and video here. So you start posting this on Facebook, you start posting this on Instagram, and I want those that are listening, because I don't know how long until we get this video up, but at the time of this recording, that's only a year and about 3 months ago. And now, if I recall from our conversation, you have 20,000 legitimate organic followers on Instagram. My memory serving?
Yep, correct.
I mean, that's absolutely incredible, and how you're resonating. But I want to back up a little bit about the unit itself. So you talked about how not so drivable, and I agree. I've driven many of them. They're a farm implement, they're a tractor, and they're unbelievably capable off-road. There's no doubt about it. But for driving and handling on the road, leaves a little to be desired. So you've talked about stereo, you've talked about colors, you've talked about leather, but suspension, brakes, engines, transmissions, steering, what have we done?
What I've done is I set out to meet the right people with my ideas. We fabricate a lot of our own parts. So we have our own braking system now, which is basically sports car braking. 6 pistons in the front, 4 pistons in the back, billet aluminum. I mean, that's big red calipers. We also set out, too, to rework the engine. So we do a modern turbo, VNT turbo, a modern cylinder head. We rework the injection pump. We go into the suspension. We lower it by an inch. We use a progressive spring. We use polyurethane bushings, anti-sway bars. So, I mean, what we've been able to do is modify these Defenders so they truly are a daily driver. They'll roll down the road, you will get speeding tickets in them. You will get pulled over because they don't drive the way the original Defenders drive. You can drift them through the corners. They're fast. It's still that diesel motor, so it's got that really cool sound. And of course, fuel mileage is really good. So that was my goal, to set out, how do I take this really cool, iconic truck that's been in existence over 60 years and make it where it's reliable, comfortable. I can do my hands-free calls, Bluetooth calling and everything in it, just like I could a normal vehicle, but I'm not rolling around with a Bentley badge or a Mercedes badge on it that people think I'm trying to show out. And that's not what it's about. I mean, HELDERBURG, the brand, is about lifestyle, and it's about slowing down and not, for so many years I was all about the grind and all that stuff. And it's not about the grind. It's slowing down, enjoying life, understanding that we're not here for that long, and just taking everything in. I mean, it's a vehicle to be able to explore and discover new things. And I can't think of another vehicle like it, really, that people will buy these vehicles and they want to keep them forever, and they talk to me about actually passing it on to their children. So that's really what it's all about. But yeah,
and you're building in the quality that honors your father.
Yeah, and it's just and I just have a tremendous amount of fun with it. So many years with the ad agency, I would get the call, "Oh, our leads are down. I'm Googling myself. We're not coming up." And I'm like, "Oh my God, really?" And then having the calls that, you'd have a client upset, and then because your account manager, didn't call them back immediately. And then you're saying, "Well, I'm going to be involved on your account." Now, what I love about HELDERBURG is when people call me, they're very happy, and they're always happy. Well, they have to wait, but they're always happy. And I have people that will call me and try to negotiate. And when they try to negotiate, and I know I'm hopping all around, that's my squirrel mentality. But, it's so funny I have very few people that will try to negotiate price, but when they do, I come back with, "Let me tell you a little bit about a HELDERBURG. It takes over 3,300 man hours to make this vehicle. It's all handmade. There's many parts on this Defender, on a HELDERBURG, that you can't get anywhere because we're fabricating them. If you were to spend 3,300 hours on something, how would you feel about it?" And then they pretty much shut up.
Well, you do the math. They couldn't go out and build their own, even at a cheap $100 an hour shop for that.
So, but it's really cool. And when I talk to people, and that's what, I'll get people that will email me and want to do everything over email. And I'm like, no, we have to have a conversation, because I have to make sure it's right for them. Because really, in every Defender that we build has a name, and I have people that, I've had numerous people say, "Well, how do you come up with the names?" And quite honestly, I tell them, I go out, I drive it, and it speaks to me. And then that's how I come up with the name. So anyway, that's a branding trick, by the way, because the way I come up with the name is, where was it originally manufactured, or who owned it, or what story can I gather about it?
For the listener, I'm looking at HELDERBURG.com, and I'm in the Defender available now section, and I don't know what'll be available by the time you listen to this, but I see you have names like Herod, Enzo, Elizabeth, Maxim Super, Bosco.
That almost sounds like a condom. Man, I should have thought about that name.
Not mine, sir. Winston. So the blue one behind you, we were talking about it earlier on the phone, and what triggered me was you said, when someone wants to negotiate, you bring up, look, I got 3,300 hours in the craftsmanship, let alone the platform donor that you had to start with, or, body that you had to start with. Just the hours alone are phenomenal value in the quality and workmanship. But you're a little bit, what you're putting into this brand, I don't want to say soup Nazi, but that fellow wanted a black one. The one with the blue. What's the name of this color blue?
Well, the truck's name is Verbosca. So it's a custom color, so I call it Verbosca blue.
Because of the island?
Because of the island, yes.
Okay. So tell us about Verbosca.
Yep.
The place. And the colors in the Defender.
Yep.
Honoring that place.
So it is true that I have people that will call me and they'll say, "I'm kind of scared to tell you what I want because I'm afraid you'll tell me no." And I'm like, "Well, tell me what you want and I'll tell you if I'll tell you no." Because what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting people to stretch their imagination and do something different and not do what they always do. So this client calls me and he says, "I want a D90." And I'm like, "Okay, great. What color are you thinking?" And all that. And because I just want to get some visuals. And he goes, "Black." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to do any more blacks." So let's talk about you. And he was taken back. And he's like, what do you mean you're not going to do any more blacks? And I was like, I'm not going to do any more blacks. I've already done 2. I'm done doing black. And I said, so let's talk about you. Granted, I probably would have done black, but I would have got him to do something completely different. But come to find out, he lives on an island and he really loves boating. And, and he told me about the island. So I'm pulling up pictures and I'm asking him, how do you normally dress and what's some of your favorite colors and all that. So I found out black was his safety color is what it really was. And black doesn't make sense if you're on an island. So that's where I said, I came back to him and I said, let's do something that takes in the colors of the sky and the sand. And he's like, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, the color of the truck, the body of the truck will represent the sky. And then the interior and the top will represent the sand. And I said, so, and this will be named Verbosca. And I said, but you're into boating. And I said, so I want to do a galvanized bumper and a galvanized grill. And what I want to do is I want the headlights to look like jewelry. And then in the back, in the cargo area, to complement that very almost white interior that I will do in a basket weave. And the reason that I do a basket weave is because it will represent the sand. And the seats, the interior is a basket weave. And it does. It looks like ripples of the sand. And then I said, but in the very back of the cargo area, that's where we're going to put mahogany. And we're going to, strip the mahogany with caulk, just like they would do on a boat. And we're going to bring that to a very bright luster. And the same thing with the back door. And I said, so it will be a very nautical theme, but it will pull in the place where you live and the hobbies that you love. He's like, well, I don't know. And he kept on fighting me on it. And he's like, I don't know. And then, all the way to the point that he was, back and forth, but I would tease him with pictures. And he's like, man, I'm really loving this. And then he came to visit to see it here before, because it's almost done now. And it was amazing. I mean, when he came in and he actually teared up when he seen it. And he's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea it was going to look like this. And that's what's really cool about what I'm doing with these. And it was a week later, I had another couple that came in, and the wife came in and she seen it. She was like, oh my God, it reminds me of a vehicle when I was in high school that I had a little VW, and she was tearing up and everything. So anyway, we're building another one that's similar to it, but it's not going to be a soft top because I don't like to do the same one twice. So it's going to be a hard top. This is a D90, which is a 2-door. I'm going to do a 5-door, and it's going to have the very top's going to be tan, but it's kind of the same thing. They also live on an island. She loves the color, and it reminds her of when she was in high school. So I guess, quite honestly, part of it's me being selfish because I do it for me too. It's fun. It's enjoyable. And it's just creating something that, that we've built a number of them now, and no one has sold it. They've kept them.
None have changed hands to your knowledge.
None. And I know because I stay in contact with everybody.
How do you stay in contact with them? Are you calling them once in a while? Or
I send emails, but I also, we built a platform because I still have the ad agency and coders and developers. But I have a platform, that when I'm doing the design, I do a build sheet and it outlines everything. I mean, the color of the mirrors, the mirror arms, the door handles, the color of the leather, and it gives them all of these pictures and the wheels and the tires. And that's when we very first do the process, that's what they go into to see what the build is going to be like, what it's going to cost them, how they pay online for it, because we require a 50% deposit to give them a build slot and also give them a truck. But then we have a portal that they go in and it reminds them, hey, it's time to do your oil change. It's time for this. Here's some products to use to actually, wash whatever Winston or Bosco, whatever the Defender is. And so it's like a membership site, and the price of membership is a HELDERBURG bespoke Defender. And that's how we stay in contact. And we also through text messages and stuff. And I encourage them to share pictures, and a number of them they do socially. They'll Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and I reshare their pictures as they're sharing them.
So it's truly lifestyle. You're not, of course, not just selling cars here.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I'm not selling cars. It's just, it really is lifestyle. And I do attract people that, love dogs. Dogs is a big part of my brand. All the stuff, the wax coats, hiking. Yeah, it really truly is a lifestyle. When somebody comes to the farm to preview and stuff, we go out in the Defender and we drive through the woods and the trails. And if they're in sporting clays, I have a sporting clay course here on the farm. And yeah, it really is. We take our time, we slow down, and I want to make sure it's something that they understand what it is when they're getting it. But yeah, it's lifestyle.
Paul, do you do any off-road? Do you have any off-road setups on the farm to show approach angle, departure angle, what the four-wheel drive is capable of, or do you not get into that?
No, definitely. I mean, my farm is very hilly and stuff, but instead of doing like Land Rover did back in the day, where they had the little cheesy looking course with a few rocks and they would show you that and get out and then, oh, look here. Instead, we just get in it and we drive through the farm and through the trails and across the creeks and all that. And that's what we do. And that's where they get so excited. But we also have our event too, where I had an event in October and people came to the farm and camped out, and we went and drove a lot of the minimum maintenance trails and snowmobile trails and all that, and shot videos and all that. But I mean, how many people are really going to take $150,000 to $200,000 Defender off-road? I do.
You live just about off-road, but
yeah, I do.
Probably not many.
Yeah. So that's their chance to come here and do that. And it's really cool because when when their Defender is done and it arrives, that's what we do is I'm like, all right, come on, let's go. You're going to drive. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go through. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to go through this. Let's go. So
looking at your site, almost all of these, I think all but one are diesel spec. So these are all European spec vehicles.
Oh, yeah, we get them in Italy, we get them in Poland, we get them in France. They're original left-hand drives. The one that's a gasoline on there, and I've had a number of those, that's my competitor. So I've had a handful of trade-ins. It's another company that's in England called Arconic. They've been around for probably 12, 14 years. And I have people trading their trucks in on mine.
Got it. So any issue with importing to the United States?
No, not at all.
Is that because of
It has to be 25 years old. That's
because of the age?
Yeah, because of the age. But it has to be the original configuration. And I do get people that will call me and go, hey, will you do the Corvette conversion? Because a lot of times, well, I don't know about a lot of times, but there's some companies that put Corvette motors in them. I'm like, no, I won't. The other company will. Because that's not what I do. And I learned that in, my advertising agency years, that I would pretty much do anything that anyone asked when it came to marketing. And that creates a lot of stress for your team, because if they're not really good at it. And so when I started with HELDERBURG, I said, I'm going to do what we're really good at, and that's all I'm going to do. I almost went down the slippery slope and did an electric Defender. And I was like, oh, there I go again. But I learned this lesson many years ago, so all I do is turbo diesels.
Well, and I mean, that's a fabulous powertrain, especially with the head upgrade I'm sure that you're doing. I haven't driven one, but with your head on it. But I know that motor. It's a nice motor.
Well, the truck, it really is a brand new truck. I mean, the only thing it stays original on our trucks is part of the body, the frame, and the engine block. So we keep all the numbers matching. The whole idea really with HELDERBURG was Land Rovers are part of it, but it's much more about the lifestyle. So if it wasn't for COVID, I mean, when COVID just started, we just finalized a deal where we were going to do a pheasant hunt. It was going to be an all-inclusive pheasant hunt where we were going to take 15 people and we were going to go do a drive. That's what it's called in England. But we were going to go do a drive at Highclere Castle and also Winston Churchill's castle, which Highclere Castle is, Downington Abbey, the series? That's Highclere Castle. So we had that lined up and then COVID happened. So again, lifestyle is what it's really all about. So we did set up one where we have a pheasant hunt that's going to be in South Dakota that's next year. So that's where really the brand as I am, quite honestly, in the semi-retirement now. I see this as a way to surround myself with people that are like-minded, that have the same interest and the same hobbies. And that's really what I do on my social media profiles is I show what I'm interested in. You know, the Defenders and the design and the motorcycles and the shotguns and the dogs and the hiking and the camping and that just attracts other like-minded people. So that's...
You're getting friends out of the deal.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. The people that come and visit are just fabulous. And I mean, and I've made a lot of really cool friends. I mean, it's been interesting.
I'm sure of it. What could be more fun? So, Paul, something that we'd be surprised to know about you.
I think I said that in the beginning, that, you know, a lot of people seem surprised when I tell them that, you know, that growing up I wanted to be a fashion designer, and I had my own sewing machine, and I was, you know, my wife, which she was my girlfriend at that time, and I was making her skirts and making her blouses and stuff like that, using different wools and tweeds and all that stuff. So I think, you know, a lot of times people are surprised, like, you had a sewing machine and you were actually making stuff? I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely was. I can definitely put a dress together.
I think that's surprising, and especially that you were dating a female.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
So, I mean, she had to be the only girl she knew that had a boyfriend or a fiance making clothes for her.
Yep.
That is very interesting. I understand the building of the business part. I'm just talking about the romance part. The Facebook Lives on schedule, catering to your clientele who are hitting you from different time zones and different times, making sure you're on time, turning your wife into a little bit of a defender, widow. I understand that. But if this wasn't very profitable, or let's say you didn't even think about it as a business, and I said, hey, Paul, you're done working, you got enough money, you're completely fine doing something you're interested in if you're interested in. I want you to drive around Land Rovers and mess with them a little bit. Once in a while, decide what colors go on them. Sporting clays, pheasant hunting, traveling with some friends, entertaining some people, some dogs, some wax coats. I think you'd be excited about that.
Nah, it wouldn't be enough because I have to have some type of a challenge. And my challenge right now is, how do I build a better product than my main competitor, which, you know, being Arconic? And how do I get people to say, oh my God, your builds are so much better than any of the other builders? Because I'm a very competitive person, so I couldn't just go, you know, freewheeling around and feel like any satisfaction whatsoever. And that's the thing, you know, that I kind of see what my competitors are doing, and I'm, you know, talking to my partner, and we've hired a couple people away from them, and I see them coming to my website, and then I see a place that they're advertising, like Hemmings.com. So I call Hemmings and I'm like, what's it going to take? How much do I have to pay you for you not to take their advertising and let me have all that advertising space?
Can you get that done? Does that happen?
It happened, yes.
Did you accomplish that with Hemmings?
I did accomplish that, yes.
That's something. I'm so glad you brought that up. I find that intriguing. So you come from the advertising space, so you understand that. I never knew that a competitor, is that common, or did you have to really have a conversation with someone?
Well, I mean, it just really comes down, they only have so much inventory. So if somebody comes in and buys up the inventory, what are they? I mean, they had the other company, you know, in a contract, and I said, well, as soon as they don't and what they were doing is they were only renewing their contract monthly. So they would, and I'm like, I'll write a contract with you for the year. I'll buy all your inventory for the year.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So they weren't under contract. There's only when you say inventory, that's ad space. There's only so much ad space, and you're like, I'll take it all. So that's not necessarily saying I need you to not sell to this one person. It wouldn't matter who it is. You took all the space.
Right, exactly. And, you know, they were saying, oh, well, we need to keep some there for them. I'm like, why? They're doing it every month. I'll do it for the year.
Have you already showed up in Hemmings?
Oh, yeah. I'm all over Hemmings.
Obviously. But I didn't know if the ads came out yet. Do you get action from that?
Yeah, I get some. I don't get as much as I would have hoped. But I get enough that, you know, I'll ride it out. It's definitely brought some new interest and some new clients. I do need to get in there and put some more ads in there. But I have aspirational ads. So when you go to Hemmings and you go under like Land Rover Defender, D90, D110, all that, my ads show up. And my ads on nice photography. I'm standing beside a 130, got my Stetson on, my wax coat, of course. And then I got an orange circle. It looks like it was just, handwritten on there, and it said, "This could be you." So,
perfect.
I'm also advertising under the Broncos too.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's bringing some people in, but it's okay. I mean, it's a few $1,000s a month, but if I make one sale off of it,
sure. Speaking of, but if I only make one sale out of it, you're currently scheduled on your builds through all of 23, or how far into 23?
I have 4 slots left for 2023.
I mean, so that kind of argues for backing off on the advertising, doesn't it?
No.
I mean, I think you're going to be out for years either way.
Yeah, no, it doesn't, because when I was started selling the trucks, like for example, I was looking at my numbers this morning. My first Defender I sold was a D110, and I sold it for $83,000 or $84,114 is what I sold it for. Didn't really make any money on that deal. Now that same Defender sells for $165,000.
Beautiful. You did it the way Lexus did.
Yeah. So
they came out cheap for what they were and got their part of the market.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing. I'm working to get my part of the market and, make anybody that's knows Defenders or searching for a Defender that I'm just there. And they're like, who is this guy? But I've made it very personable too, where I'm doing the lives and, it's me and I'm telling stories and all that versus any of my competitors. They just don't get it when it comes to marketing and building a brand.
Well, I mean, we got an advertising man that gets into the lifestyle and a luxury good business. We got to give your competitor a break. They probably were more about the machine and not the advertising wheelhouse like you have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're doing extremely well. I can't take that away from them. They've been around for a long time. All of them, because I have a lot of competition. I mean, there's over 80 builders that I know of.
What's the next thing that'll get the HELDERBURG logo on it, brand on it? Can you talk about that?
I don't know. I did have a store for a bit, and I was selling stuff in the store, like gun cases, gun sleeves, that type of stuff. But the next thing, I don't know, I'm thinking about doing Norton motorcycles.
I think that's a perfect fit.
The only thing is, a lot of the guys that are buying the Defenders, whenever they see the motorcycles, oh man, I love motorcycles, but they don't own motorcycles because their wife won't let them. Well,
but they still like having them in the garage and in the living room.
Yeah, they think they're cool and everything else. And I mean, and that's part of, what I do in my marketing that, you see, some of the stuff you see, the shotguns and the side-by-sides, even though I get a little bit of grief, some people, and I'm like, well, you just need to go away. Apparently, we're not going to get along. But, in the rangefinder, the Leica cameras, the wax barber coats, and then, of course, the motorcycles. So it just kind of fits in. And that's it. Really, I mean, to be selfish, it's about me.
Paul, it completely fits. In my area, I would never ride. I used to ride. It's just too crazy where we are. If I was upstate, I probably would. But, these guys love quality goods. So, for example, there's many timepieces they have in their automatic winders in their closet that they're not wearing.
Get a matching Norton.
Oh, my. Especially if it's matching.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine a Norton in the same color spec as that blue Defender behind you?
Yeah, with the same accents and...
Oh, and the stitching and, I mean, the basket weave. It'd be fabulous.
Yeah, it'd be really cool.
Please do it.
Well, the thing is, whenever you do it, you got to make sure that you're going to make money off of it. You can't be just doing it for the love of it and exchanging dollars.
Well, obviously you're not afraid to ask money.
So I'll dabble in it and everything. But I have a new Norton that's almost done that should be here in a few weeks. So we'll see. And then and it's orange, and we did a Defender in orange that it should be done. So, but of course the Defender's sold. I don't build any Defenders unless I have a deposit. So anytime we build it's already sold. I already have a deposit on it.
So what am I looking at on your website then? Is this not available inventory?
The one Hayrod is. That's one of my personal trucks.
Oh, I see. So forgive me. I see available now, and then I see custom build estimate. I missed that. I'm sorry. Other than the Arconic trade-in that you got.
That was a trade-in. That was a guy that traded it in. He wanted one. He wanted a Helderberg. He's seen one of ours. We're going on tour with Orvis here pretty soon. Well, September.
What's tour mean? Are you going to go to some
We're going to be at
concourse?
the shooting grounds. So we're going to be at the Orvis in New York, and then we're going to be at the Orvis in Pennsylvania, and then the Orvis in Alabama. And so Helderbergs will be on display at the 3 different shooting grounds. So What
about space at any Concours d'Elegance?
I've thought about it. I just haven't done anything with it yet. I've had Barrett Jackson calling, saying, "Oh, let's put a truck on on auction." I'm like, "Yeah, let's not."
So, Paul, with all of your Facebook Lives and designing vehicles and dealing with people, time zones ahead of you, time zones behind you, working with your facility in England, your ad agency, you made time for our show today, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. So, and congratulations on the new baby.
Thank you very much. What I'm hoping for is to make it to her graduation.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.